Hi, thanks for having me. As she said, I come from Barcelona, but I'm originally from the US. I do not have a driver's license, so I can't imagine very easily a future where I do not have a car. I'm going to talk about several things that are inspired from my last 20 years of exploration of more sustainable and smart cities, the role of the sharing economy, and of course, driving down into what we believe is a future of mobility, which we call in my company, IAMOB, the Internet of Mobility. We all know the car is being disrupted. I'm sure there's some OEMs in the room and they hate seeing this slide and they've seen it 100 times. Although most of the German OEMs have really figured this out already and are amongst the most advanced in the world from an OEM perspective on figuring out what the future could look like for an OEM company when people are not buying cars as much as they used to, and that is part of the future. So we're seeing on cities descending all kinds of new solutions. And in every mobility conference we all go to around the world, we're used to this. We're seeing a range of new technologies and solutions in cities, and there's a lot of buzz around these. Let's talk about some of them, and I'll give you my opinion. And I'll be on the panel later, and you can tell me why I'm wrong later. Micromobility, here to stay. Bikes have been around for centuries, and in cities as well. The shared bike revolution is not new. We've had bike sharing in cities. Well, Amsterdam started like 40 years ago. This is not new either. Electric bikes are a little bit newer, and shared electric bikes are newer. Scooters are pretty new. Electric scooters, they're arriving all over the place. This is my second time to Berlin in a week, and I cannot believe the amount of scooters and shared micromobility that are all over the cities right now. But I am a big believer that micromobility is a critical part of the mobility ecosystem, and it can really help solve first mile, last mile. But we can't just let it develop however it wants. My panelist is going to go deeper into where regulation policy needs to come in. We need dockless solutions in our cities. It increases the quality of life for our residents, but it can decrease the quality of life for our residents if we don't manage it properly and we have these devices scattered all over the city. There are some innovative solutions for that we can talk about. Urban air mobility. Lots of excitement around urban air mobility. You know my opinion about urban air mobility? Don't like it. Why? Why are we going to the sky in our cities? Because we messed up the ground. We messed up the ground level, so okay, it's congested, air contamination. How do we solve that, especially for wealthier people who can pay for a flying taxi? Well, let's just go into the air. Why don't we solve the ground level? It's kind of like we screwed up planet Earth with climate change and everything, and the forest, Amazon. Why don't we just go to the moon and create colonies in the moon? I think the better answer is let's get our act together and solve mobility at the ground level. And there may be roles for urban air mobility for drones, particularly in rural areas, delivering medicines in emergency cases. But as a general rule, I'm not too bullish on the future of urban air mobility in cities. Autonomous vehicles, very big topic in cities these days, and in the tech circles as well. I believe there's a big role for autonomous vehicles as well. However, I think we're going to see a big disparity in different parts of the world and in different cities. So North America, I'm from the US, so I can say this. We know they're a very car-dependent culture. Germany has historically been as well. But in North America, they embrace the car. It's freedom. It's a personal right. It's liberty. I have a right to own a car. I believe we will see more traction and more adoption of private autonomous vehicles in the US. And I believe in Europe and other markets, we're going to see adoption of shared autonomous mini bus services in Europe. Why? Because I believe Europe has it right. Cities are for people, not for vehicles, and we need to design our cities for people, and to do that, we don't embrace and love the car in urban areas. I'm not saying there's no room for cars in our ecosystem or in our garages. I'm saying there's very little room for private vehicles in urban settings. And many European cities are figuring this out and trying to regulate ways to reduce dependence on private vehicles in cities. 5G. We all know 5G is coming. Everyone talks about 5G with a connected car, which I agree is a very important, empowering tool. But I think 5G is going to have some interesting impacts on mobility more broadly that we're not totally talking about yet. For example, I think it's going to improve our ability to hyperlocate a range of urban vehicles throughout the city and more seamlessly connect them. Another thing I think we'll see more of is at the app layer, we're going to see more augmented reality solutions. Imagine if you're doing like my company does. We enable fully seamless end-to-end mobility journeys of public and private, including rail in the middle between cities. So you have this combined multimodal journey that goes between Berlin and Munich or Barcelona and Madrid, including scooter to get to the train, take the train, then take a taxi. You have all this. How beautiful would it be to be able to interact in a 3D way instead of on your little phone, have that whole journey mapped for you in front of you, projected from your phone device. I think 5G will enable those kinds of solutions. All right, let's talk MOS for a bit. In fact, the rest of my talk is mostly about MOS, mobility as a service. Most of you are probably quite familiar with MOS. MOS is defined differently across the world. And in some parts of the world, they don't even call it MOS. Like in the US, they're talking a lot about mobility on demand, MOD. My view of MOS, at least how I define it, is that it's an enabling tool for users to seamlessly access public and private mobility services in one single application. So they can execute their whole journey with one app. Remember, going back to this sort of blitz of new mobility services in cities, in Madrid, take a guess. How many different scooter companies have a license to offer shared scooters in Madrid? 5? 7? 10? 18. 18 scooter companies. Guess what? They all have their own app. Now, if you want to take a scooter as a resident, or even worse, as a visitor, when 15 of the 18 don't even exist in the city you live in, like they're not in Berlin, there's 15 that are not here, so you would never know about them. You want to take a scooter from one point to the other, are you going to download 18 apps? No. What if you're not sure if a scooter could be a part of a multimodal journey? How do you combine them? That's where MOS comes in. MOS is massive. Projected, depends on which experts you look at, but the projections are it's going to be $1 trillion marketplace by 2030, which means a lot of companies are entering the MOS market. There's a lot of different models for how to roll out MOS, and I'm going to talk about some of those and where we think at IAMOB is the future of mobility and MOS. So I consider there's been sort of 3 existing generations of MOS already. There is a single provider MOS solution. So this is like an automobile company like Toyota or BMW saying, instead of buying or leasing one vehicle, you pay a monthly service fee and you can access a fleet of vehicles. So maybe during the week you want a small electric vehicle, and on the weekends for your family you want a big SUV. We'll give you whatever you need in real time and you pay a fixed monthly fee. That's sort of version 1 of what MOS was. Version 2 of MOS, which still exists, of course, today, is a single provider but multi-modes. The most commonly found with public transit agencies, where they have different services. They offer bus, metro, bike sharing services. They offer one app and maybe sometimes one payment form, whether it's a card or even better yet, EMV, or integrated into your phone device so you can pay for all the services in one experience. That's step 2. Step 3 is what almost every one of you probably think MOS is. That is WIM, if you're familiar with WIM, and most of the models right now in the MOS market. What they do is they go out, the company creating a MOS solution goes out to specific providers in a city and recruits them and often offers an exclusive arrangement for that provider so that they would be the exclusive taxi provider of a multimodal app experience. Then they get public transit, then they go to the biggest scooter company and try to get them on board. Most of these MOS solutions going with this model don't enable what we call at IAMOB deep integration. Most of them are light integration, so they're journey planners. So if you're familiar with City Mapper, what does City Mapper normally do? it'll give you a range of mobility services you can access in one device, so you can find all the services available and find out how long it would take you to go from one point to the other with that mobility service. But actually, if you want to use that service, you have to leap out of their app and download or use the other app of the service provider. What we believe at IAMOB is a future of MOS is fully integrated, seamless experience. So a user never has to leave the app to do anything. They can access the whole mobility ecosystem. And for me, the whole is super important. When I say the whole, I don't mean negotiating with one taxi operator. I mean an open API, an open marketplace, so that all those 18 scooter companies or all the private ride hailing or all the taxis, they can all be part of an open ecosystem. And why is that the future? Because the alternative is stupid. Why should I have one app that connects one scooter company, one taxi company, the public transit authority to get me from A to B, when the likelihood is that one taxi company's vehicle is 15 minutes away, but there's a taxi a block from me? I should be able to, as a user, access the whole ecosystem and discover. It will enable more efficiency in the mobility ecosystem, can support open innovation, and encourage startups, so it doesn't just have this monopolizing effect. It allows any organization to join, even a startup. So if you go to this idea of an open ecosystem, you kind of assume public transit authorities and municipalities and government agencies are going to get involved more. And they're going to support open standards. And this is starting to happen. Some of you may have just heard about the Open Mobility Foundation. It was started by a bunch of cities, mostly in North America, trying to get their handle around what's happening with scooters primarily and micromobility and how they can manage the parking better in a more collective way, understanding each other. But underneath that, you get the vision where they're going. They're going to be encouraging and supporting the growth of an open global mobility ecosystem where mobility services expose their APIs so that any MOS aggregator can integrate them, preferably deep integration, so that they can not just do journey planning, but allow the booking and payment. That, to me, is part of the future of mobility. There's a graphic that's not showing, so I'll skip that one. Okay, so you're probably thinking I'm showing this slide because of electrification, which is a very big trend, and it's not going to slow down. I agree, and I support it. But there's another reason I'm showing this, and it goes to this idea of an open mobility ecosystem. And what do we mean when we say the Internet of Mobility? What is Internet of Things? Internet of Things is the idea that any device, this, my phone, the tables, this screen, is connected to the Internet. And all these devices connected to the Internet can enable more seamless crunching of big data and better efficiency in cities and for end users or citizens. All right. Well, then what is the Internet of Mobility? Same idea. What if every mobility device on the planet was connected to a back-end protocol so that whenever it wanted to be, it could be discoverable as a device for any user anywhere in the world who has an app connected to that protocol? So I'll get to what I am showing this screen right here. What if OEMs in the future, and this might sound very futuristic, but it's not, because we're speaking to some who are looking at this idea. What if OEMs in the future embedded the capability inside their nav system that the minute the user says, I'm going here, the smart connected car already knows there's 3 empty seats in your car, and it prompts you as the owner of this vehicle, you have 3 available seats. Are you willing to make them available on your journey to where you're going? Yes or no? And you could say no, or 1, 2, or 3 seats. And maybe previously you've had settings when you bought the car, or you can change it when you want, that customizes what types of people you're willing to take in your car. Maybe you're a woman and you're not letting another man you don't know, a stranger, come into your car for safety. So you'd say it could only be females. Or maybe in the future it could be anyone that you're connected to on LinkedIn or in Facebook or whatever. So that's one aspect the nav systems and OEMs could offer. Another one very similar to that, again, this is not very futuristic at all. It's already happening in some regards. You park your car at the airport and you say, I'm going to be gone for 4 days. Make my car available for a peer-to-peer car sharing platform. That might sound crazy, but last I knew there was like 30 million people in the US that are part of Turo, which is a peer-to-peer car sharing network. So what has IAMOB built? It's this capability, this back and front end seamless capability so that any mobility service can connect to our back end architecture. We've built our own algorithms that allow the infinite combination of mobility services, public and private, so that an end user can have a seamless A to B journey. And then we've built a white label application. Our customers are not end users. Our customers are public transit authorities, rail operators, airlines who want to offer this seamless mobility experience to their end users. Here's an example of me going from my home in Sant Cugat outside of Barcelona to the Smart City Expo. This is real data and real algorithms where one of the options that in my opinion is a superior one is to take a train half the way, get out, take a taxi the rest of the way. A multimodal, or some people call it intermodal journey. But not only do our algorithms enable that combination, but our technology enables the user to have that taxi waiting for them at the station. And then when they take the taxi, we have private ride-hailing vehicles like Cabify integrated and taxis connected as well. The user never has to leave the IAMOB-powered app, and when they get to their destination, the taxi is paid inside the same app. They don't have to download the taxi app. Here's an example of our first client's application. Renfe, probably many of you know, Spanish rail operator. This is me going from my office in Barcelona to the Renfe office in Madrid. What we discovered, we did a lot of user research. We believe UX. If you think big UX, user experience in mobility is so broken. All these fragmented apps and bad experiences, especially with legacy operators, public transit authorities, how to enable integrated payment and experiences. So with our app, after doing all this user research, we discovered what people really want. When they're doing longer journeys, they want to be able to book and pay for their long journey with their seat assigned. And then they want to customize and modularize their journey from A to B, from Berlin to Munich, Barcelona to Madrid. And that's what we've enabled in the app. The user can pre-book anything they want inside the app, or they can dynamically book. So they pre-book and pay for the train, and then they dynamically on the same day book their to and from first mile, last mile, as an example. All done inside the application, combining public and private services. We're starting the beta test with users in a few weeks, October 1st. I'm just wrapping up. So this is our vision of Internet of Mobility. Truly multimodal, combining any private and public service in a way that makes sense for the user, and the user can filter their results. We have that already built. What we don't have built, but we will, is add machine learning so we can understand the user behavior. Like if it seems like an optimal route to include a bike share in this experience and they never choose it, maybe they can't ride a bike or they don't want to, so why do we keep giving them that option? So we will learn over time as well. This idea of signing up for any service, so onboarding any mobility service inside one seamless app, global mobility roaming. Any user of any app that IAMOB has built for a client can travel anywhere in the world where IAMOB has mobility services integrated, the Internet of Mobility, and access any mobility service they want to in any other market. So let's say we later work with Deutsche Bahn, and Renfe customer comes to Germany. All the services we've connected for Deutsche Bahn could be accessible to a Renfe customer when they arrive to Germany. Finally, we believe in this mobility marketplace, and eventually it's in our roadmap. We haven't built it yet. There'll be some blockchain components in here to enable smart contracts and a fully decentralized architecture around a MOS ecosystem so that anyone could build their own hub or their own app and connect to this open mobility marketplace. This, in a nutshell, is what we consider to be the Internet of Mobility, and we believe is the future of MOS. Thank you.